Welcome back, English learners, to Talk Easy English podcast, your weekly source for mastering authentic English and picking up real-world skills that matter.
I'm Leo.
And I'm Maya. We are absolutely thrilled to have you with us today. Whether you're trying to ace that job interview, navigate a difficult conversation, or simply speak English with more confidence, we've got an episode packed with value just for you.
Absolutely, Maya. Today, we're tackling a skill that is arguably one of the most challenging, but also one of the most important for success in any environment, especially an international one: mastering the art of constructive feedback.
That's a fantastic topic, Leo. Feedback is the fuel for improvement, right? But delivering it without causing offense or receiving it without getting defensive, that's a whole different ballgame.
It really is. Think about it. Our listeners are constantly seeking feedback on their English speaking, their writing, their presentations. But what if they also need to give feedback to a colleague, a study partner, or even a friend? How do they do that in clear, diplomatic English?
That's the pivot. We often focus on receiving feedback, but being able to give constructive input is a hallmark of an effective communicator. I remember a time early in my career, I was so afraid of sounding critical that my feedback was vague and useless.
Oh, I can totally relate. I once had a colleague who just kept saying, "That's fine, just better." Better how? It left me utterly confused. The lack of clarity was a real stumbling block.
Exactly. And that's what we want to fix for our listeners today. We want them to feel empowered to both give and receive feedback effectively. We're going to show you how to frame your comments using sophisticated intermediate English phrases.
So, in today's episode, we're breaking down the 4 pillars of constructive feedback. We'll cover how to make your comments actionable, how to use diplomatic language, and why separating the person from the problem is absolutely essential.
And don't forget, we have our signature global toolkit for you, a free PDF guide accompanying this episode. It includes all the key phrases, vocabulary breakdowns, and a mini quiz to reinforce your learning on this critical topic.
Later in the episode, our language expert, Professor Clara, will be here to walk us through some essential intermediate vocabulary we'll be using today, like stumbling block, nuance, and take the initiative. These are words that will truly elevate your English fluency.
So whether you're aiming to improve your professional communication, enhance your study group dynamics, or just want to navigate difficult conversations with grace, this episode is a must-listen.
All right, let's dive right into our first pillar of constructive feedback: the power of specificity.
Let's kick things off here, Leo. Why is being specific so vital when giving feedback? It sounds obvious, but many people still miss this step.
They do, and here's the core issue: vague feedback is effectively no feedback at all. When I say, "Your presentation needs improvement," what does that actually tell you? Nothing actionable. It just creates anxiety.
You hit the nail on the head. It's too subjective. The goal is not to give an opinion, the goal is to provide a diagnosis and a remedy. Our listeners should aim to replace general statements with concrete, observable examples.
Think of it like a doctor. A good doctor doesn't just say, "You're feeling unwell." They pinpoint the exact issue. In communication, we need to pinpoint the exact moment or element that needs adjusting.
Can you give us a concrete example for our English learners? Let's imagine someone is giving feedback on a short essay.
Absolutely. Instead of saying, "Your conclusion was a bit weak and confusing, this is vague and discouraging," we should say, "The paragraph beginning on page 2, line 5 lacked a clear transition, and the final sentence didn't effectively summarize your main argument." Next time, try explicitly restating your thesis using a different phrase.
Wow, that is a huge difference. The second piece of feedback is so much more effective. It isolates the problem, the transition, and the summary, and immediately offers a clear, practical solution. That makes the feedback actionable.
Exactly. Specificity removes the emotional guesswork. When you tie your feedback to an observable behavior or a measurable result, the recipient sees it as information, not a personal attack. This is crucial for maintaining a positive relationship.
I've found that using the "when you do X, Y happens" structure is incredibly helpful here. It keeps the focus on the impact.
That's a brilliant structure. Let's apply it to a language learning context. Say a study partner is using too many filler words when speaking English.
Instead of, you need to stop saying and like all the time. A general critical command, you could say, when you started that section on historical trends, X, I noticed you used 3 times in the first 30 seconds, which made the audience momentarily lose your train of thought. Y. For our next session, let's try pausing for 2 full seconds instead of using a filler word.
That's the perfect blend of being specific, mentioning the impact, and suggesting a next step. That third element, the suggested fix, is what really transforms criticism into constructive input. Feedback isn't just about identifying a fault, it's about providing a roadmap for correction.
And for our listeners who are struggling to find specific things to comment on, my tip is to take notes in real time. Don't wait until the presentation is over. Write down the precise minute mark, the specific phrase, or the exact slide number where you saw something that could be improved.
That's a great practical habit, Maya. It makes you a more attentive listener and a more effective feedback giver. Being specific shows that you genuinely paid attention and you care about the recipient's growth. It shifts the entire dynamic from, I'm judging you, to, I'm collaborating with you to make this better.
That idea of collaboration is key. When you are specific, you are offering a hand, not pointing a finger.
Right. So, pillar 1 in short is, swap vague opinions for precise, actionable observations tied to measurable results or behaviors. And remember that, when you do X, Y happens, structure.
Fantastic start. Now let's move on to our second pillar, which addresses the emotional side of feedback, the separation principle.
If this lesson helped you build your English bridge to the world, show us some love. We believe in one global conversation, and your support makes it possible. Hit the like button, subscribe to join our mission, and let's keep learning together.
We've already covered the critical need for specificity in feedback. Now, let's move on to our second pillar, the separation principle.
This one addresses the emotional elephant in the room, doesn't it, Leo? We're talking about separating the person from the problem. This is often where feedback goes completely off the rails.
It is. When feedback feels personal, people immediately become defensive. Their brain stops hearing constructive advice and starts hearing, you are bad, or you failed. Our goal is to focus entirely on the action, the outcome, or the process, not the intrinsic worth of the individual.
Exactly. Think about the language we use. We need to avoid definitive character-focused statements and instead use language that suggests the issue is temporary and fixable.
Can you give us some examples of what to avoid and what to aim for?
Certainly. Let's look at what not to say first. Avoid character judgments like, you are always disorganized and that's why this report is a mess. You clearly don't care enough about your English pronunciation.
Ouch. Those feel harsh and personal. They attack the person's character, making them feel judged rather than helped. How can we rephrase those using the separation principle?
We focus on the observable task. Let's reframe that first example. The structure of this report made it difficult for me to follow the key findings. I suggest we create an outline first to streamline the flow of information.
Much better. You focused on the report structure, which is an editable thing, and not the person's inherent level of disorganization. That word, streamline, is a great intermediate verb there.
And let's try to reframe the English pronunciation example. Instead of attacking their effort or care, we focus on the listener's understanding. I noticed when you used the word schedule, I had difficulty catching it. Perhaps we could spend 5 minutes on the nuances of the SCH sound after our study session.
That is the perfect example of diplomatic framing. You're not saying your pronunciation is bad. You're saying this specific word was difficult to understand, and here is a plan to address it. You've shifted the focus from a personal failure to a solvable communication gap.
Another powerful technique under this pillar is using I statements rather than you statements. You statements often sound accusatory, while I statements focus on how you, the person giving feedback, were impacted.
That's such a practical tip. It's about owning your perspective. Instead of saying, you are late for our online meetings, which shows disrespect, which is a harsh accusation.
You could use an I statement. I feel a bit stressed when our online sessions start late because I worry we won't have enough time to cover the material. Could we find a way to ensure we start precisely at 9 a.m.?
Notice how the problem, lateness, is addressed, but the accusation, disrespect, is entirely removed. The tone is collaborative, not confrontational. It invites the other person to be part of the solution rather than defending their character.
Exactly. Our listeners should remember that constructive feedback is about building bridges, not burning them. By separating the person from the problem, you make the feedback feel safe, making the recipient much more likely to internalize the message and take the initiative to improve.
The final piece of advice for this pillar: always remind the person of their overall value and positive contributions. If you start the conversation by affirming their strengths, the subsequent corrective feedback is much easier to digest. It shows you see the whole picture, not just the flaw.
A quick example. Leo, your research for this project was outstanding and incredibly thorough. I especially liked the statistics you pulled. However, on the formatting, I noticed the section headers weren't consistent. Let's adjust that now so the final document looks professional.
See how the positive affirmation sets a supportive tone. It provides emotional cushioning before introducing the necessary correction. That, listeners, is the art of the separation principle.
So pillar 2 in a nutshell is: focus your language on the observable action or task. Use I statements to express impact and always affirm the person's value before discussing the area for improvement.
Brilliant. Now that we know how to make feedback specific and non-personal, let's move on to our third pillar, the action-oriented mindset.
The biggest mistake people make when giving feedback is stopping at the critique. They point out the problem and then, silence. Leo, why is that so detrimental?
Because it leaves the recipient with a great big question mark. Okay, I know I failed, but what do I do next? Constructive feedback must always point forward. If it doesn't offer a pathway to improvement, it's just plain criticism. We need to encourage an action-oriented mindset.
Absolutely. The key phrase here for our English learners is, focus on the solution, not the source. Instead of dwelling on why the error happened, focus on the next steps to prevent it.
Let's practice phrasing that. Imagine you're giving feedback to a language learner whose spoken English is grammatically correct but lacks variety. They are using the same 5 adjectives over and over.
A critical but unhelpful approach would be, your vocabulary is too basic. You should have studied more complex words. It focuses on the past failure.
A helpful, action-oriented approach would be, I noticed you used good and nice quite frequently. Moving forward, let's try replacing them with more vivid adjectives. For instance, next time, use exceptional or compelling. Your homework is to learn 3 new synonyms for good this week.
That's perfect. It gives them an immediate, measurable task to focus on. It's not a vague command to improve your vocabulary, it's a specific request to focus on synonyms. Our listeners should make sure their feedback passes the next step test.
The next step test, I love that. Does the person receiving this feedback know exactly what they should do next, and is it a small, manageable task? If the answer is yes, you've succeeded. If the answer is no, you need to simplify your recommendation.
And here's where we can use some excellent transition phrases. Instead of just jumping to the solution, you can soften the suggestion by using phrases like, I recommend that you try, moving forward, let's focus on, what if we explored the option of, a helpful step might be to.
Those are brilliant for maintaining a polite, professional tone. It turns a command into a suggestion, which respects the recipient's autonomy. Remember, you're not their boss, you're a collaborator.
And for our listeners receiving feedback, an action-oriented mindset means you should actively ask for solutions if they aren't provided. Don't just sit there feeling bad. Ask, what is the single most important thing I can do differently next time? Or could you recommend one resource that addresses this issue?
Asking proactive questions like that shows maturity and a growth mindset. It proves you're not dismissive of the feedback, you're ready to take ownership of your development.
So, Pillar 3 boils down to never critique without a concrete solution. Ensure your feedback points forward, not backward, and always offer a small, manageable, immediate next step.
Absolutely. Now, let's wrap up our 4 pillars with the one that gives feedback its true lasting power, the follow-up framework.
If this lesson helped you build your English bridge to the world, show us some love. We believe in one global conversation, and your support makes it possible. Hit the like button, subscribe to join our mission, and let's keep learning together.
We've been specific, we've separated the person from the problem, and we've offered an action-oriented solution. What's left, Maya? Why is the follow-up so crucial?
Because without follow-up, the feedback is just a momentary conversation that quickly fades. The follow-up framework ensures that the change actually takes root and becomes a permanent improvement. It's about accountability and reinforcement.
I see. If I tell a learner to use 3 new synonyms this week, but I never check in to see if they did it, the motivation to complete the task quickly evaporates.
Precisely. The follow-up is where you close the loop. It signals to the person that their growth is important and that you're invested in their success. It transforms the feedback giver into a mentor.
So, what does a good follow-up look like? It can't just be, did you do it?
No, it needs to be specific and timed. A great follow-up should involve 2 key components, checking in and praising effort.
Let's break down the timing first.
You want to check in soon enough that the initial feedback is still fresh, but not so soon that they haven't had a chance to apply it. If the feedback was about a small change in their daily English practice, a check-in after 2 days is ideal. If it was about a larger project, perhaps a check-in 1 week later.
A good follow-up question might be, hey, how did it go trying to replace, with a short pause? I was listening closely to our discussion today, and I think I only caught one, That's significant progress.
Notice the language there. You are praising the effort and the progress, not just the final result. That's the second key part. You're acknowledging the work they put in, which is incredibly motivating. Use phrases like, I see you made a real effort on that. That was a significant improvement from last time. I'm really impressed with the steps you took.
By focusing on the effort, you are reinforcing the growth mindset we discussed. You're telling them, the path to success is about consistency, not instant perfection.
The ultimate goal of the follow-up framework is to ensure that the small adjustments become second nature, that they transition from a conscious effort to an unconscious habit.
And if the person hasn't made progress, the follow-up is an opportunity to adjust the plan, not to assign blame. You can ask, did the recommendation feel too difficult? Should we break that action into an even smaller step?
Exactly. Feedback is an iterative process. It's a cycle of observation, action, and adjustment. Our 4 pillars, specificity, separation, action, and follow-up, are designed to make that cycle positive and productive.
Fantastic. I feel much more equipped to handle those tough conversations now.
Me too. And speaking of equipment, it's time to equip our listeners with some powerful new vocabulary.
That's right. We used quite a few intermediate-level words today that can really enhance your English speaking skills.
Let's hand it over to Professor Clara, our resident language expert, for the vocabulary toolkit.
Hi everyone, I'm Clara, and welcome to the Vocabulary Toolkit. Leo and Maya used some excellent words today that are perfect for anyone looking to sound more nuanced and professional in English. Let's break down 4 key terms. 1. Stumbling block. Definition: an obstacle or difficulty that prevents success. It's the barrier in your way. Context from the show: Leo said, "The lack of clarity was a real stumbling block." Example for you: my biggest stumbling block in English conversation is understanding idiomatic expressions. How to use it? Use this when you want to describe the main challenge preventing progress, whether it's in a project, a relationship, or your learning. 2. Streamline. Definition: to make a system or organization more efficient and effective by using simpler working methods. It means to improve the flow. Context from the show, Maya said, "I suggest we create an outline first to streamline the flow of information." Example for you, we need to streamline our study process by dedicating specific hours only to listening and only to speaking. How to use it? This is a great professional verb. Use it when you are talking about making a process, any process, from making a cup of coffee to writing a business plan, faster, smoother, or more logical. 3. Nuance. Definition. A subtle difference in meaning, expression, or sound. It refers to the small, often difficult to notice details. Context from the show, Maya said, "Perhaps we could spend 5 minutes on the nuances of the SCH sound." Example for you, when learning to speak, I'm trying to pay attention to the nuance between formal and informal language. How to use it? This word shows sophistication. Use it when discussing complex topics where the small differences truly matter, such as pronunciation, tone, or cultural distinctions. 4. Take the initiative. Definition. To assess and start a course of action independently. It means to be the first one to act, without being told to. Context from the show, Leo said, "The recipient is much more likely to take the initiative to improve." Example for you, my manager praised me for taking the initiative to organize the new filing system without being asked. How to use it? This is a powerful, positive phrase in any professional or academic setting. Use it to describe someone who is proactive and driven to solve problems or create improvements on their own. And that's it for today's vocabulary section. Remember, the best way to remember new words is by using them in real-life situations. Try to include these words in your conversations or writing to reinforce your learning. Back to you, Leo and Maya.
Thanks, Clara. Those breakdowns were incredibly helpful. I especially like the distinction between using a new word and using a new word with nuance.
Me too. So, to wrap up today, let's quickly recap the 4 pillars that turn a critique into true constructive feedback. Pillar 1, specificity. Ditch the vague statements. Use the, when you do X, Y happens, structure. Pillar 2, separation. Focus on the task or action, not the person's character. Use I statements. Pillar 3, action-oriented mindset. Never stop at the problem. Always provide a clear, actionable next step that passes the next step test. Pillar 4, follow-up framework. Close the loop. Check in, reinforce the effort, and adjust the plan as necessary.
Remember, giving feedback is a skill, and like all skills, whether it's speaking English fluently or mastering public speaking, it requires practice. Don't worry about being perfect, focus on being consistent and intentional.
That's right. Next time you hear someone struggling with their English, or if a colleague's report is confusing, don't just say, "That's wrong." Use the language we taught you today to offer a specific, non-personal, and actionable suggestion.
By doing this, you're not just improving your communication skills. You're cultivating better relationships and showing true leadership potential. You're transforming a potentially negative moment into a powerful opportunity for growth.
And please, if you found these tips helpful, download our free Global Toolkit PDF. It contains all the key phrases we used today, including the vocabulary from Professor Clara's segment, and practice exercises for giving and receiving feedback. It's your resource for internalizing this new skill.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Talk Easy English podcast. Keep applying these strategies, keep practicing your English, and keep communicating with confidence.
We'll catch you in the next episode.
Until then, keep speaking up and keep growing.
If this lesson helped you build your English bridge to the world, show us some love. We believe in one global conversation, and your support makes it possible. Hit the like button, subscribe to join our mission, and let's keep learning together.